Okay, guys, sorry we're off to a late start. Thanks for being patient. Welcome, everyone, over there. Let us aim for an hour-and-a-half meeting, which is traditional here. If we can be shorter, that would be awesome, but we have a fair amount to do. One of the things that we're doing is an item I'd like to move up, and that is the elementary diversity conversation, because I'm suspecting that most of you are here for that. Is that right? Is anyone here for anything else other than that? Okay. Snacks. Well, feel free. The melon is good. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So that you guys can go home. Although of course you're free to stay for the entire meeting. But let's go ahead and do that after the warrants and the payroll. That work for everyone? Also, I'd like us just to touch base on the annual Vermont School Board Association meeting, which is happening October, I think, 18th and 19th. Just want to touch base that that's happening, and I likely can't be there, so I think we should just figure out how we all get information, because there's the annual meeting then. And so let's talk about that process. We can add new business later, but is there anything else that comes to mind that's not on the agenda? Okay, let's get going then. Yes.
Would you just pass the sign-in?
Yeah.
The computer.
To
sign-in.
you?
Yeah,
Okay.
there are people.
One thing I also want to do is we talk about the superintendent evaluation process tonight. That is, we are going to go into executive session for a part of that. And so I'd like to actually push that to the end of new business so that Frank can go home if he would like. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, let's go ahead and approve the minutes.
If there's approved minutes of May 30th, 2018. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, I'm going to interrupt myself, that there's some faces that not everyone is familiar with. Does everyone know? Do you want to introduce yourself? Kelly, I don't think I know.
Kelly Young, I'm from Guilford School Board.
Welcome. I don't think we've met, so. Anyone else? Okay, good. Communications? No, go. Oh, you don't, you want to introduce yourself to Joe?
Sorry, I can't remember your name.
Josh Salisbury.
I can't see it on the wrong side. Did you want to sit all the way down there?
Well, I was gonna say, I thought there would be more people. Maybe if you guys don't mind, I'll move down there. How's that?
It's easier for the camera if you guys sit closer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if you said that.
In exile.
Yeah, it seems like
Okay.
not that many people.
So I'm aware of two communications that came in the last sort of day that were diversity from the public, I believe. So those are two communications. I'm not thinking of any other, that I believe you shared one and I shared one, thanks to Barb. Anything else that's, no, all right. Oh, there was the communication about the VSBA dues, but I don't, you brought that.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, so again, thank you, everyone. Some people just came in. The folks who just came in, are you here for that diversity discussion or something? Okay. Can we go ahead and someone from the finance move or discuss the warrants and payroll?
I move that we approve the warrants that we approved in the finance committee meeting, as indicated on the warrant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Thanks. Let's go ahead and do.
Who seconded?
Yes, you seconded.
Michael again. Yep, Michael and Michael.
Is there, can someone do the payroll?
Move that we approve the payroll as indicated on the warning for the Finance Committee meeting, and I don't know, was it on the warning for the full SU meeting
It
as well?
is.
Yes.
Sorry, and on the warning for the full SU meeting.
Seconded.
Any discussion? No discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No? All right, thank you. Does every board have a quorum? I think a couple don't.
I think two of ours are supposed to be coming, but there was another thing going on.
She's coming.
Christine's coming, but late, yeah.
And Tim's coming.
Tim is
Tim
coming.
is coming, but I counted a quorum
Right.
for
So Putney does not have a
both.
quorum.
Okay.
Oh, well,
I
yes, you do.
I can
You
count
do.
for both of them.
Very
I just only get one vote.
Well, you know where your vote must go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that means that one of our voting members is not here, I can be a voting member? Is that the way
If
it
they
works?
designate you to be so, yes.
No.
Is Sue coming?
I don't know about Sue, but I know that Christine's coming, yeah.
So we're good? Okay. Let's go ahead and, as discussed, talk about the diversity item, which I'm a little bit out of the loop on, so.
So I'll introduce it and then turn it over. I think Robin and Annie might have some things to add. We are proposing that we add a half-time diversity position, and we move the VU 6 diversity full-time position into WSESU, so that WSESU would have a 1.5 FTE diversity position, so that we could cover more than just VU, we could cover all schools. So we can turn over.
Should I start by making a motion?
Oh, you could.
Okay. It's basically what Lyle just said. I move that we fund the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Social Justice at the amount of $162,000 to include funding for one full-time and one half-time position. The full-time position, currently known as Diversity Coordinator, will be transferred from the BUHS 6 budget to the WSESU budget.
Second.
Can you clarify what fiscal year you're talking about?
For the following year, the 2019 to
Okay,
2020. Yeah, not the current school year, though.
Yeah.
Can I clarify, the amount is including benefits
Yes.
So yes,
for the full-time position?
actually, you might want to pull that out. That includes benefits for the full-time person, a half-time salary, which would not be benefits, but also money for budget, so materials, that type of thing.
Right, so 150,000 was the amount for the two positions, one full-time receiving benefits, one half-time with no benefits, and then 12,000 for materials. Currently, the position at BUHS 6 has a budget of $6,000 for that, but since this would be more than doubling the number of students served, we felt like doubling that number would be a good starting place for what the department would need to run itself.
Okay, so we've opened for questions and discussion.
Can I continue on the financial?
Yeah.
I'm curious, I actually have no idea. So I'm curious what other funding goes into diversity related?
Right now, $0. There is an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Social Justice that is part of WSESU, and there's a committee chair and meetings, but there is no money allocated to it. So this is kind of relying on BUHS 6's generosity to share the services and money that they have to benefit the whole SU. That's the current situation. And all of the support that the diversity coordinator has been providing at the elementary school levels has also been just sort of on the BUHS 6 tab. So it's not really and in the current job description, it is not a official part of the job. It's sort of at the discretion. But basically, that means that officially there is no support around in this issue for any of the schools except for the ones in the BUHS 6 district. And it's just that when the diversity coordinator is able to do that, which she does, but I think it would make much more sense for the people that are receiving the services to pay for them. Additionally, it's not really to serve 10 schools in this capacity is too much for one person. So that's why we wanted to also add a half-time position, but have the two people work together to, rather than having one person for these schools and one person for those, it would just be more like a department where they could work together and sort of consult with one another and with the administrators.
I have one more follow-up on financial stuff.
Is
So
that okay with everyone?
I'm assuming that, I mean, I know what we do in Brattleboro for diversity, and we're at the town level with the elementary level. And I don't know exactly where I would say our budget is either, although I would.
I don't think we have any budget for that either.
But we are doing things, you know, so I don't think there's a line
What
item
do you
that
mean?
says for diversity training. I mean, we've certainly tried to be aware of bringing in different speakers and different curriculum materials over the years.
Well, a lot of that
Focused
is
on that.
at the direction of Michaela. So she's been working with all of the grade schools in the SU
But if
and
we
giving the
bought
support to the
materials,
teachers.
We've spent that out of our own budget, is what I'm saying. So I'm curious if Dummerston, Guilford, Vernon, if you guys are spending as well on diversity in any way, or if you have any, I mean, from what we're saying, we're clear we don't have a lot of tracking on specific diversity spending, but I don't want it to be representative that we don't do anything in diversity training ever at all.
Yeah, I would be cautious to say, to like check a box and say this is diversity. I think that's,
I mean, that's the definite difference. of what we're
one doesn't
bringing in.
want to do that because I think this is a more of a commitment. One would continue with those activities, I imagine. Hold on a sec. But this would be a different level of.
Right. But I'm just asking the question of everybody then, if there is any diversity training going on or any at your schools now?
For teachers, for students?
Anything you
For
could
board.
probably speak to, yeah, I mean, I know, okay, so for us, we've just done the board and some of the folks came from some of the other school district boards. Maybe you could just enlighten us as to what's going on from professional development and such too.
So I work with the administrative team, so we each year read articles or are reading a book on culturally responsive teaching and the brain. Grade level meetings, the diversity coordinator at BU6 has always been released. BU6 is always fine, letting her come and work at grade level meetings. Individual schools, it's dependent. Some schools spend more time than others. And I would say that's a site-by-site thing that happens. My ultimate goal is that diversity isn't a separate thing that we do, but diversity is what we're incorporating every single day. So that's my thoughts about why we would need another person, half-time person, so that this person can work with teachers, co-teaching, working on lessons, so that we're looking at every portion of every day. And that does not happen now.
I'm going to suggest something. How about we hear from Jody and then we sort of table the motion and hear from the public who's here on this issue. I don't want to, we went ahead with the motion and I don't want to limit hearing from the public on this. Does that work for everyone? And then we'll go back into discussion. Yeah, okay. Does that work?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from the public, and I'm all in favor of diversity, and I've been watching what's been going on, and I know Michaela's overloaded. However, I do have one issue, and the issue is that more and more things and administrative things are getting put into the SU budget, which is increasing. That's one issue. The SU budget is not voted on by the towns, so I have some very real concerns about that. The other issue that I'm thinking of is that there are towns that need more help and there are towns that don't. And I'm wondering if there's some way that this could be done outside of the SU budget, keeping Michaela in the high school and then having, maybe a half-time person for middle school and a half-time person for the elementary. I mean, I'm even talking about increasing the time, but getting it out, not putting it in the SU budget.
All right, I'm gonna open it up to the public. You guys wanna raise your hands to see who wants to talk, so we leave time? Okay, I'm willing to bet that only one of you is raising your hands, but I imagine that once you start, there we go. Okay, so why don't you, so I'm gonna ask you to stand up and say your name, maybe even what town you're from, and go on. You just raise, there's a woman to your right who's next going to speak. And then just raise your hand if you want to speak after that.
Okay, I'm Corey Sorensen. I live in Guilford and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Guilford. So I just wanted to put in my 2 cents about the diversity training that we're getting, which has mostly been at grade level meetings for teachers, and it has been under the direction of Michaela or the Diversity Equity Committee. In my classroom right now, when I asked my students what diversity was, their response was slavery and black people. There's a huge misconception about what diversity is in our schools. Teachers don't know how to teach about it. I have a student in my class who's crying when he goes home because he's not white. And when I talked with my principal about it, he wants to reach out to other principals and figure out what's going on. And I just think that there's a huge need for this. And I joined the Diversity Equity Committee because I've seen this as an important thing. Michaela doesn't have enough time to come around to all of the schools. I think that somebody needs to come to schools and teach lessons and also train teachers in how to teach lessons around diversity, because I think it's a huge issue and it's always been important and unobserved, and it needs to be observed more.
There's a piece of paper that should be floating around. Please, if you would, just put your name and your town down so we have a record of who's here.
I'm Bonnie Hudspeth. I'm from Putney, and I have 2 young children, one of whom has just started at Putney Central School. And it's a void in Putney, and we really have a great opportunity here. The proposal, as you spoke about, diversity and inclusion needs to be woven into everything. It's not separate. And so the easiest way to facilitate that would to be to support the current coordinator and to expand so that they have enough resources to do this important work, as just referenced by a teacher. And it's shown, every time this is studied, it's shown that children do better in school, do better in social life through increased diversity, and I think that would include training. So I just want to voice my support for having that and for the opportunity to get more training in Putney. We have a latent diversity committee that's doing nothing right now, and so we really could use the support in training and resources. So I urge you to support this.
And I'm going to take a deep breath. My name is Abby Manukin, and I live in Brattleboro. So yeah, a lot of things come to mind. I want to echo what Bonnie just said and also what Lyle said is, I think the end goal for me is where diversity isn't like a separate thing that we're teaching. Like, this is your diversity class, and then there's everything else. And I think until that moment, the diversity coordinator and position just needs to be expanded as much as possible in every school. And it's not, I would hope not just racial diversity that we're talking about, but all kinds of diversity. So I have a same-sex partner and we have 2 kids. So when she learns about families, is she learning about families that also look like hers? Or is she learning about families that are like the normal, traditional family? And diversity can be all kinds of, it can be class, it can be, LGBTQ, race, culture, religion. It's so many different things. And all too often the stories that are told in our schools are dead straight white men and what they did and where and when. And until that changes, it feels like at every point along the way this needs to be woven in so that my kid and your kid and whoever else is coming home from school feeling like they're represented and that others are represented and that all these voices and stories are heard.
Yes, you.
Hi, my name is Nebrasa Rebate. I came here to the United States like now it's the 3 years ago. I have a child, he's 14 years old, he's in bands, he's in 8th grade. and we are different religion and culture and race too. So the things, I mean, we came here to Vermont and Brattleboro that we hear that it's like the most area that accept the different people or like non-American or immigrant or so for him, I'm trying to teach him there is nothing different. We are all human. But when he faced the reality, he's saying by himself, "No, Mom, we are not the same." They deal with me like differently. He had some issues last year with bans inside the school. So I tried to take him to another school. He said, "No, I will face it now. I rather to face it now than face it in the future." So he is really like a strong kid, and I really love the area. I mean, we find like a lot of welcomes everywhere here. So thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Nicole Awad. I'm actually a teacher up in Springfield. And I'm here because Michaela has actually been a resource to us when she's not at work. We're trying ourselves up in Springfield to start our own kind of aware group at the high school. And so Michaela's been really lovely enough to be on the phone with us after school to tell us and give us suggestions about how to do that. And so I think that not only is it something for Brattleboro, but it's something that's really important for all of us to incorporate into all our lives. It's not just about necessarily the classroom, but I think oftentimes children have a lot to teach us. And so I think that through Michaela's work and through other teachers' work who have been doing this work, that I think there's many important lessons for us all to learn. And I've talked to many teachers up in Springfield who need that and asked for that. And so I think that Michaela does a great job of that, and I think that expanding her work and expanding that position for whomever is in it is really essential to our kids' learning.
Sheila Linton, Brattleboro. I'm part of the Root Social Justice Center and the coordinators of Youth for Change, and these are some of our Youth for Change people here. I've spoken here many times before. I'm an alum of the UHS. I have a history of trauma from this school because of the things that happened to me. And I'm appreciative that there has been a position, such as the one that Michaela's been in, to carry forth the work that we, when I was in school, had to create in order to create that safety net, in order to create that awareness, in order to change and shift the narrative that we're talking about today. I agree with the motion as said. I think it should be moved to the SU because we need to share that amongst all of our schools. You're hearing from many of the different towns about how they need this, about how we need this, about how you need this. And I think we all have to do it together, and I think we all have to share the wealth of that or the inequity of that. I'm also agree with everything that's said here as well, and I would really like to see not only one position and a half, but actually to expand that. And my concerns that I have with just 1/2 position, and more concerns is that I hear that there won't be benefits connected to the position, is trying to retain somebody who will be able to be in that position and do the hard work that needs to be done. And when you undermine that position in that way, where people cannot have a livable wage or cannot support their families, in order to do the work that we all need to be, the community that we need to be, it doesn't put our best foot forward. So I ask you to not only approve, but I would love to have a friendly amendment to consider adding benefits to that part-time person and even making that 2 full-time people to be spread across the SU.
Hi, I'm Lauren Pearlstein, and I'm the school librarian at Putney Central School. And I also support what lots of people here have said, and just want to remind everybody of the outpouring of people last year when this position was being questioned as to whether it was going to continue as it is now, and how many people see the need and the consistent work being done in schools to support all of our students. and I'm on this diversity committee at Putney Central, and every school needs to have one of those diversity committees that's being supported also in a larger way. And many teachers find that I've talked to at the meetings, what are they called? The grade level meetings. To be some of the most important work that they come out with. So I absolutely support the expansion of the people and the work being done already.
Go ahead.
My name is Maya. I go to WHS, and I can just think of so many reasons why this, like the diversity coordinator should be far more like respected and put at a higher honor, I guess, because she does so much for this school, and like there's so much, I feel like there's people don't always recognize that, and there are so many reasons why the work should be heightened to teach children here, and in elementary school and in middle school, and like just all the time through the curriculum past just like diversity class in 9th grade. And just speaking from like being in school every day and hearing the stuff that the students say is appalling and so upsetting, and I just don't think anyone should be so ignorant that they should say the things that they say or not understand why those things aren't okay to say, or why we live on stolen land. That like there is so much that, I don't know, there's just so much we need to understand, and the students here need to understand that I don't think we're being taught. So I think it's really important that that is furthered in our education.
Summer Birch, Brattleboro. I have a third grader at Oak Grove School, and I just want to echo everything that everybody said, that I agree that this position should be, I didn't hear the beginning, so I have to apologize, but I believe that a coordinator position should be brought into the elementary schools. I think it's very much needed, so I just wanted to represent the parent representing the Oak Grove School.
Yeah.
Real quickly. My name is Anne Louise Wagner. I live here in Brattleboro. I am trying to find like exactly the right piece that I want to add to all of this great support that's happening for this position. But I believe specifically that this type of support and awareness and learning cannot just exist in the high school. That in working, I'm an educator that works just over the border, and we recognize more and more in the skills that we're trying to develop, we need to keep going younger and younger. And so that support needs to be there 100% for the elementary school students, but also that development of awareness and just naturally integrating this type of learning and lessons and critical thinking starting when students are first entering the school system. So yeah, that full-length support is important to happen throughout their entire school experience here.
Abby again. I just forgot to mention that my daughter Lucy is in first grade at Academy School. And I also just recently rediscovered a podcast called How to Not Accidentally Raise a Racist. And it's directed predominantly towards white parents, but definitely a core theme that ran throughout it was start young, have these conversations young. By high school, things are so ingrained. I mean, things are really rooted, and like we don't need more trauma to happen in our schools at any point, but we have to start young. And also that as much as I love that, like, we are all one, we are one people, we are all the same, that's the fallback that a lot of white parents teach their kids, and actually that's not how people are treated in this society. So acknowledging difference is so important, and acknowledging that difference early and often and talking about it, and then talking about, like, yes, we're all different, and isn't that awesome, and these are some of the ways that you're different than your friend or this person. And so yeah, definitely echoing that and starting early. And I also support Sheila's amendment to bring it up to 2 with benefits, even better.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much, guys. We're going to leap back into the board discussion on the motion then. Okay?
I just wanted to add one thing to what's been said, because I do think that it's a common misunderstanding what Corey mentioned with his students feeling that diversity refers to people of a different race or some visible difference, and that that's what this coordinator is for, to support different people from white people, which is not the case. First of all, every school in our SU is full of a wonderful diversity of students. Some of that you may find very visible differences, some of it you would have no idea. But the learning that can come from the stuff that the diversity coordinator provides to teachers and administrators is something that benefits all students. Even the least possible marginalized person is benefiting from this work, because the only way that the kids are going to learn to not be racist is by really examining and applying critical thinking to everything that they're learning in school and seeing in the world around them. So the diversity coordinator's role is to help teachers provide a more equitable and accurate experience for their whole class, all children. This job serves all children, so there isn't any schools that need it less than others. They all need it equally.
Anything else?
And as far as moving it up to the SU level, Jody, it was to maintain the benefits package that already exists for the full-time coordinator. If we divide that position up between schools, we can't offer the benefits in this case. At least as far as the IRS says.
Well, we do offer benefit, well, yeah, I guess not. I'm trying to think of our specials. Do they get benefits, Christina? The ones that teach in Guilford and Dummerston, and the ones that teach in, because talking to one of them in particular, she was not unhappy at all with what was happening with her.
I'm not sure what the difference is though between SU level and school level.
I think that's good if Frank address it.
It can be done, but it's pretty difficult, and it's difficult for the employee, and that it depends also on, Blue Cross Blue Shield won't allow a person to be on a policy if they're employed less than 17 and a half hours a week. So, in terms of the way you define part-time, that's sort of a hard line that we can't overrule.
Can you speak up, Frank? I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know if anybody else.
I was just saying, the way you define part-time really matters, because, for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield and the VHI program that all Vermont schools are part of, we have to work within their rules, and their rules say that if you work less than 17 and a half hours a week, you're not eligible. You can't be on the plan. It's not like, you can get on the plan and somebody else will pay the difference. They're just saying you can't be on the plan. So
is it 17 and a half hours a week at each school, or can you add up
at an
those
employer,
17 and a half hours?
it has to be with an employer, yeah.
With one employer?
Yeah. So that's just one of many issues around trying to share them.
I think beyond the logistical paying part of it, that would cause some really problematic possible issues, having people working within the same sort of department, but each reporting to a different boss. And this was something we actually had talked about when we were coming up with this idea that it would create an opening for division within the department rather than having a unified approach and collaborating together. If there was just different people working at different schools rather than one department under the SU.
I think that can be overcome, but anyway, I'm all in favor of the positions myself. It's just putting it into the SU, so.
Question, I'm not sure who can answer it, but what, if any, precedent is there for a half-time SU employee getting or not getting those healthcare benefits? And is this, so you're saying is this a 20-hour a week position?
I'm not sure what's been.
Do you want to restate the motion?
You said part 5. then
It was a
20 hours.
1.5 full-time equivalent. So that was looking at one full-time position and 1.5 position. Now, I don't know if the number of hours, I think you had said something about 19.5 hours a week, right, Lyle? Is the maximum that we would be able to offer at this dollar amount.
For what we, what we put sort of out.
Line.
I'm sorry, yeah, 19.5 is what we were looking at when we priced it out.
So that position, so we have 3 types of agreements at the supervisory union, and so does everybody else in the district. We have a collective bargaining agreement for support staff, we have a collective bargaining agreement for teachers, and then there's the non-union folks that to some extent there's just an agreement, but more often than not that group is just individual contracts. So to answer your question, our collective bargaining agreements provide different levels of benefits for different job groups, and not sure where this position would fit in, but we certainly could figure that out. In those agreements provide for a pro rata benefit for part-time. So if you're 50% time, you get 50% of the employer paid benefit.
I see. And the motion did not include that pro rata, so that it's 50% time with no benefits.
That's what we figured.
That was the
right.
benefit, that was the motion that we're looking at.
So it would have to go up some for half-time benefits.
Can I ask a rough, Frank, how much would it go up?
So health insurance plans are, range from about $9,000 to $20,000, depends on which the employee chooses. So the range is somewhere in there. In terms of the employer share, it's again, it depends on which contract we go into. So because there are different rates, but I think a sort of a middle of the road number might be 10,000.
So if we wanted to add a half-time benefit for the half-time person, we could change the motion to 172,000. I mean, I will amend the motion to include that. I would hope that it's not a deal breaker and we can discuss that if it is, but of course, I'm open to being able to recruit a person by offering benefits with this. And I know that is something that our schools in Brattleboro have had difficulty with recently, is attracting a large number of candidates, and especially trying to attract candidates that are not white. So I think that might make sense to at least add a half-time benefit to the position, but.
Okay, so you're making friendly.
Yeah, I'll friendly amend my own motion.
Okay, you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable, yes, second again.
To 172,000.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Is there further discussion, or, yeah?
I'm kind of curious about how the reporting would go. What, is there a department within the WSESU that would be the reporting, that the diversity coordinator position would report to?
That has not been determined right now, because it's a position at the high school. The high school principal is the supervisor.
Yep.
When it moves into WSESU, right now, Office of Curriculum Assessment report to me, Special Education report to me, so I would assume that this also would report to me, and we'd work out what that accountability looked like.
Yeah, I'm also curious about curriculum alignment Because if it is at the WSESU level, and we do have uniform or relatively standardized curriculum, is there anticipated that the positions would support curriculum development that would be employed not just with personnel body in the school, but with curriculum development that would allow for it to spread beyond just the 1.5 people that represent the office?
So it would integrate with the 2 curriculum coordinators, is that your question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm wondering if in some ways we think of this as a budget issue. We're approving money to go into the budget, which we will be building, but then there's room for for other conversations that those conversations we don't really need to delve into, although we're touching on them, and that if this was approved, this could come back at the next meeting, and we could talk further about that, and also whether there are grant opportunities that aren't being reached that would actually move us forward pretty significantly in this realm.
And I feel like this is a way for your board to give direction to the WSESU Finance Committee, so that when you need to start putting together WSESU budget, then you know the will of the WSESU board.
On that same vein, coming back to what Jody had said, putting things in the SU and how we put together that budget. I think you're saying this, but just clarify for me then. So our vote tonight would be to say we as a supervisory union, speaking for all of the individual districts who would have the benefit of this position, are in agreement with the idea of having that position. But then the finance committee would have the ultimate, and we're in this motion, we're actually giving a dollar amount. I'm not sure that we've ever done that before, but I don't know if we've had, I think these are good conversations for us to have, because we do end up putting more people in the supervisory union budget, and it isn't looked at in the same way. So I'm trying to get clarity in my head of how that moves forward.
I think what we're doing is telling the finance committee to build this into the budget, and then that budget gets proposed to his board.
And then it's easy to add staff, and it's easy to see the need and the good that can come out of almost any staff position. I guess that goes to Michael's question of where's the reporting and how do we track it? And I'm not sure if it is easily reported back. This is exactly what happened. I think of it as our Brattleboro Town School Board has put on first one social worker and now a second. And it was a similar kind of a nebulous thing that we know it's a great thing. I think it's a great position to have. But to know how we're getting the benefit, I think Michaela might have something to say to my question. That's my question. Well, yeah, if she can answer.
I can answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say that it definitely is not nebulous. I feel like there are aspects that are not measurable. My work with individual students sometimes is not measurable unless they show up and report that, and a lot of my work is that. A lot of my work is visible, and the fact that I do organize events, even the Diversity Day downtown, I was a huge part in organizing that, which is very visible. The 2 days here at the high school, and supporting schools doing those kind of events at their own places, at their each individual sites. So there are measurable things. There are activities that are done in the classroom. There are other unmeasurables, like how you do things. I feel like the one piece of it is the content of what you are teaching. But what is also often forgotten too is how you address people and how you interact is also a part of it. And so that is less measurable. So there are aspects of it that are not measurable because they are about interactions. But when it changes someone's individual life, then it's invaluable, I would have to say. The other piece of it is very measurable. What is happening? How visible am I in the community? How am I plugging into different resources and plugging students and parents into other resources? All those things are measurable. I would say it's definitely not nebulous. It's very concrete, and I'm very grounded in this community and doing this work in a way that's visible to other people. So I wouldn't say, I
I would say that you could come up with tick boxes for certain aspects of the position, and for other things you couldn't. And I would say that in a time study, which is how my original job description was developed, it was developed during a time study. I can also tell you that during that time study, kept me from doing my job, because when I was keeping track of what I was doing, it was taking me half my day to figure out what I was doing in a given 5 minutes. I'm like, well, what do I put when I'm doing 3 things at once? And so those kind of things are very cumbersome, but I do have a list of things like that. And I do keep track of what I do, and it's very transparent and easy to see.
Thank you. Thank you, Michaela. And I don't know if nebulous is exactly the word that I should use. I'm just thinking that for us with the social worker position, it's easily apparent to us that this was a good idea. And for confidentiality reasons as well, we don't always hear back. But we've kind of made it a point at our board level of asking for feedback from the social worker, exactly what's been going on, what do you see, and how has it been a value, and asking for the principals and such. And I guess I'm thinking that this type of position should have some of that same sort of oversight by a board of, I guess, the supervisory union level, if the position's going out to all of those schools. So it wouldn't be hearing back necessarily whatever Michaela and, well, it wouldn't be Michaela, but what the person going for everybody would be doing, wouldn't be necessarily hearing a checklist, but also hearing from the administrators, teachers, librarians, and the folks that are speaking up here tonight, how that has been impactful and helpful. I guess if we do this, I would strongly urge us all to keep that in mind.
Okay, Jody?
I would like to second what a couple of these people behind me have said, in the fact that it really needs to start in pre-K kindergarten. It needs to start really early to make it easier when the kids get into BAMS or the high school. Because by that time, things are set to work with the younger kids. So I would suggest that that's what happens with the half-time person, that they start with the younger kids.
That was definitely a goal.
You can't just kind of work down to it, you need to work up to it.
Right.
Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. Can you restate, is that all right? Can we restate the motion? And
Okay, I'm just gonna include the amendment.
Yeah.
I move that we fund the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Social Justice at the amount of $172,000 to include funding for 1 full-time and 1 half-time position with proportional benefits. Does that sound right?
Yep.
The full-time position, currently known as Diversity Coordinator, will be transferred from the BUHS 6 budget to the WSESU budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we're switching Michaela over to the SU2.
Yes. Yes.
So then
Yes.
she would be reporting back
Yeah.
for everybody.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
I'm abstaining, because I think it doesn't belong in the budget.
Okay, Jody is abstaining. It stands. Great. Thank you very much for coming, guys. Okay, what we're doing now is moving on to firearms, the policy review. And I'm going to ask Lyle to, before she presents the policy, can you just quickly review how we discuss policies and how that process works?
So you can remember that any SU policy comes here. We do 3 readings. Those policies go back to your individual boards for deeper discussion, questions, any suggestions for changes, that type of thing. Those are sent back. We change the policy, add additions, deletions, etc. And then eventually we have 3 readings. So today's firearms and dangerous deadly weapons policy, this is the 2nd reading. There have been a few questions. One board had asked 1,000 feet from the school or the school grounds. It's the school grounds. Somebody asked to include Brattleboro Police Department in addition to sheriff, into the sheriff or the Vermont State Police. So that's something that could be added. But according to our attorney, any any person who sees a person with a firearm or any type of weapon at school should call the local police. The police will come and arrest that person, and then what happens after that is sort of out of our control. Then the police or the sheriff take over. And the other question was, this is different from the federal, and the other answer from the attorney is that's okay. Schools, districts can have their own policies that are stricter than a federal policy or different from. And those are in place at school, during school, all school times. So it would happen at recess like we had in one case, anytime, because it's a school policy. So we're on to reading number 2. If there are other questions, changes?
Although, well, it wasn't recess, it was after school, if you're referring to.
It's okay, yeah. Any school grounds.
I think the Dummerston question was, we have houses within 1,000 feet of our school, and a lot of those people, you know, Dummerston, you know what's going on, a lot of people have their own firearms at home. Did you get a explanation of how we reconcile that issue?
If it came onto school grounds, then we would, but.
So if they have a firearm in their home or on their property within 1,000 feet?
There's nothing.
There's not an issue?
Yeah. Yep.
I think Kelly had a question.
That was the
same question.
My question is, and I was present when we discussed it in Dummerston, but a gun can shoot far more than 1,000 feet. And I don't know how you do that. Can we do something like they do no shooting areas in Brattleboro? That's not what they call it, but
No discharge of firearms?
yes, that discharge of firearms or anything like that within a certain distance, and I don't know what the distance is in Brattleboro. But I know we all have houses, and Putney does too. They all have houses that are really close to the school. And somebody could be over in the cemetery across from Dummerston, and that's fine. I don't know how to address that.
And I don't either. I can ask again.
Are you saying like, are you looking for something that excludes private homes from the 1,000-foot perimeter? Would that solve the thing that you guys are asking about?
Not my problem, but yeah.
I mean, in some respects, yes, because right now the policy just broadly states that within 1,000 feet of the school, it doesn't necessarily, it kind of implies, I think where you were getting at with the distinction was that it implies within 1,000 feet if you're on private property, right? But where's the distinction between someone like putting a rifle into their car to go hunting and someone sees it and it's across the street from the school? You know, the policy, but I get your point also that, you know, call the police. Police are going to be the ones that not us say, we have a policy. You know, it's not going to be me, you know, waving a piece of paper around saying that we have a policy that you can't do this. But it's you know, just to tighten it up, I think was the idea.
So essentially, the police will be aware of our individual policy and pertaining to those instances, say like you were talking about somebody putting a rifle in their car across the street, because it's, you know, there's a federal that's more similar to this, but then the state overruled that at one point as well as many other states. So then the police have to be like, well, is it, you know, they apparently would have to be enforcing our particular, you know, just for this SU. In that case,
And I
which
can't
would be kind
imagine-
of weird for them to, you know, hard for them to do, I imagine.
And I can't imagine they would if a person's going
Yeah.
hunting and they're putting their.
No, yeah, I mean,
Right,
that's.
but it might be different if they come in with a gun rack with a number of guns, then the
Right.
police could say, the policy is, you
yeah.
can't have these guns on, you need to take them home before you come to school, or.
Right. Yeah,
I
I mean-
will say, I think it gets further complicated with like youth hunting, you know? So like you got like what looks like a student, but you know, only during school hours, right?
So we do
So-
here.
Students are already prohibited
Yeah.
from having.
No, I understand that, and I'm not saying that they would be on the school property, I'm just saying near the school property, within that 1,000-foot curtilage area that we're kind of trying to flesh out, you know?
Annie, did you have
No, I'm noting that a person can declare
500 feet from an occupied dwelling on his own land. And that's for discharge of firearms. The simple possession of them is obviously not regulated here in Vermont. No one is suggesting we're going to search cars or anything like that. And we could exclude specifically private property that abuts the school. We can put a safety zone around the school for discharge of firearms, and that includes homeowners, but it's not simply possessing.
Right.
Kelly?
I have a question about where the 1,000 feet starts. So in Guilford, we have, a certain amount of space. Is it from the building? Is it from, and I'm not sure I even know where that line is. So I guess.
It's the property, that was one.
Right, but I'm saying that someone driving along the road, if they're just driving past and they're, maybe there's not I don't think it's clear how far, at least to the public, I wouldn't.
From the Vermont statutes, within 500 feet of any occupied dwelling, house, residence, or other building or camp occupied by human beings, or any barn, stable, or other building used in connection therewith. So it would be basically, I'd imagine, from the wall of the school, 1,000 feet in all directions.
Well, that's the discharge zone. This one says the whole school grounds, not just the building.
Yeah, so the property line is not. Right.
Well, I'm not talking about, okay, I guess that, so it's 1,000 from the border of the school property, 1,000 feet. So I see a problem with someone who maybe doesn't live in one of those homes, but maybe is going to visit someone there and is in a respectable manner, legal, not doing anything wrong otherwise. And I see an issue with that. I have a concern about that. I have a concern.
We've had schools and guns for a long, Vermont has a long history of hunting, and we've had schools here for a long time, so why are we looking at this specific policy now?
Someone brought a gun onto the playground at Putney.
So, to me, that's a clear no-brainer type thing. I'm wondering what the there's the law, and then there's trying to enforce the law.
But it seems like a no-brainer, but it was actually not against any rule. So that's why we're trying to make a rule, so that it's not allowed to bring a gun to the playground.
But it is against the rule, according to what she just read.
This is that's discharging the gun, not just having it on.
So it's not against the rule to bring the gun and wave it around on a playground. It's only against the gun to blow it up.
At this point.
This is specifically about property ownership. You can declare a 500 foot from the buildings that are on your property, a no discharge. Well, no discharge is the no-brainer for us. Obviously, no discharge. I don't care how far away from the building it is. All right. I know I'm being exaggerated there. This is to keep the guns off property, which is illegal for all students at all times, whether they hunt or not, but not for members of the general public unless they have malicious intent, which of course we would not be able to determine until somebody started shooting. And the reason that it's now is because it's happening and it's getting attention, and I don't see a world in which it won't increase, at least for the foreseeable future.
So what we're trying to do is establish a policy so we can call the police and say, come enforce this.
Yeah, come remove this person and their weapon from our property, yes.
And if you read the policy, there is a section that says exceptions. The board recognizes the following exceptions based on the current federal and state law. If there's a conflict with the board's policy in the state or federal law will prevail unless the board has the authority to be more restrictive. In such cases, the board's restrictions will prevail.
There's also something in there about recognizing the police, if someone's on duty picking their kid up and carries a weapon, that was okay.
Any police officer in uniform should not be disarmed.
Right. Any person in uniform, that was.
I was just going to say times have really changed. We were just discussing this the other day at the Historical Society at Dummerston, that the kids used to come and walk to the one-room schoolhouses hunting. Then they would put their guns in the back room, go to school, then they would pick their guns up and hunt on the way home. Times have really changed, unfortunately.
No, we have
So we're just reading it tonight?
Yeah, so we need a third, yeah. All
So
right.
I would suggest that you go back. I can do some more research on discharging, like the cemetery. But I would suggest that you would want to talk about it again at your local boards.
Okay, and if anyone has further questions, go ahead and shoot them to.
Don't look so excited.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. All right, so can we move on? All right. Let's do the State Board of Ed and then board signature as VSBA and then to superintendent evaluation. That's 7:07 and we were aiming to be over at 7:30 or so wish us luck. State Board of Education, it's here because it just happened and just wanted to know if anyone wanted to touch base on it. There's a meeting on the State Board's having a meeting on the 2nd and then a second one, I think, towards
17th.
Yes, they're having 2 October meetings.
And they've just said that it's going to be at Bethel in the White River Supervisory Union for the 2nd.
Okay. Shall we move on? Okay. Board signatures on audit docs?
So I'd gotten a number of questions on that because this was different procedure this year than in the past. This year, everybody had to do some signatures, so I asked Frank if he would be willing to talk about why the change and what it all actually means.
Sure, and I can try to answer questions. I'm assuming folks are looking at that 2-page document, and it refers to it's a questionnaire about related party transactions. So this is from the Tyler Sims auditors, and they're going through their obligation as certified auditors in the state of Vermont to comply with a procedure that essentially reviews our oversight systems, our control systems, and in this case they're asking you as board oversight personnel if you have any related party transactions that should be disclosed. So it's really just it's a survey document, and it's to assist all of us in our review to look at our internal controls and our procedures and address anything that may come up as a result of the survey. So, any questions on that?
How do you treat your school board stipend on that?
So I think there was a question on there that said, do you have any receivables? And then it goes on to say, other than ordinary travel and expense advances. Now, because school board payments are authorized by a town meeting vote, that's all. It's not really a subject to question. It's been authorized. The disbursement is a public record. It's they see those transactions. So.
I mean,
So you would put no on that?
I put yes, $500 stipend.
That's fine.
I wasn't sure what to answer, but I just.
Generally, folks wouldn't put anything down there because it's routine and it's already. It's not related to. They're getting at when they say related parties. They're getting at some of the old examples of. Do you own the bus company? Do you own the insurance company? And have you steered, the insurance business to the school because, your spouse owns it?
Right.
Those are the old kinds of issues that did exist. They were common, but I haven't heard that kind of issue for a long time. Was there another question?
I
I just put down that I called the office and you weren't there, but I just put down that my husband has contracts that come up for it
Mhm.
every Tuesday.
Yep,
That's what
that would be appropriate, yeah.
Should we, that's the same if we have staff that's working in the school system, or only if they're getting outside contracts?
It would be like during contract negotiations, you'd recuse yourself.
Mhm. Yep. So that's on number 3, you know, related party transactions. And you can see they're referencing agreements and so on. So it's a good thing to disclose, but it's also you know, legal as long as Jill just said, you know, a board member recuses themselves if there is a related party transaction. Anything else on that? Okay.
Yeah, great, thanks. So let's do VSBA dues and then quickly the conference in October.
So as of last year, the VSBA dues were assessed at the SU level, and then they are determined according to the ADM of each school. So we will we were invoiced by the Vermont School Boards Association, just to give you a little update, a reminder of what they do. Comprehensive model policy manual, regional bargaining councils, new board member orientation. You might remember that little spiral-bound book, Essential Work at School Boards, training opportunities, workshops, annual conference, which we're going to talk about, Vermont Education Law Book, communications on board operations, policy changes, etc. Free video tutorials. So those are some things. Plus, on fee for service basis, superintendent searches, superintendent evaluation, strategic planning, board events, and retreats. So we are invoiced this year for $10,461.
10,000 what?
461.
And that's not for any service, that's just.
That's your dues to be a part of the VSBA.
And when we translate that into the assessments that I was just saying about the ADM, you know, so for our districts, Dummerston, Guilford, Putney, Vernon, it's a close to $700, and for Brattleboro Town, it's about $3,300, and for Brattleboro Union, it's about $4,400. That's how that would be allocated.
Shall we? So what we need is a motion for $10,461 for VSBA dues for what, 19, 20? 18. Okay.
This year.
It's the current year.
2018, 2019. So moved.
Is there a second? Further discussion?
So individual boards no longer have a say as to whether they want to belong to the VSBA then? It's just supervisory union, right?
Yeah.
We have a new member for the VSBA. Things might get better. Oh, no.
Any other further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? You're opposed.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Yep, okay, thank you. So there's and congratulations to Christine, that should go in the minutes. So there's the annual conference, the 18th and the 19th of October. I would usually go to that this year. I don't think I'll be able to go. There is an annual meeting at that, and the one member of each SU votes on resolutions and bylaws on behalf of all of their districts. So there are 17 resolutions, and I don't know if there are any bylaws. I didn't review those. But what I'm going to suggest is that boards talk about those resolutions, come to consensus, send me that information, and then I will pass it on to a person who can be at that conference and then vote accordingly. Does that make sense? Or I'm happy to
The person
handle this.
Us?
Yeah.
And who Who do we know what's going?
Well, I'm sure not everyone knows. Yeah.
How do we get a hold of the resolutions? I didn't see them last night.
They're on their website, I believe.
A VSBA?
Yeah. So they did a YouTube, the resolutions are explained on a YouTube video. I would imagine there's also a link to print them out.
Thank you.
Does that work for everyone?
So when would you like that signed?
I would, let's see, so it's the 18th, so shall we say the 16th?
Is somebody willing to go up there in your place?
I'm sure someone will. I'm not sure if everyone has wrapped their heads around whether they can.
Can we vote on who that would be tonight?
Yeah, we need a representative, one representative.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would imagine that there are people who might be going who aren't here.
Emily had thought she was going to try to go.
Emily?
Emily Hart's, Guilford Chair.
Are you going? I mean, if you're going, Christina, you could, if you're definitely going.
Are you going?
I'm 99% sure I'm going.
Well,
Didn't it say we have to
we
decide today,
appoint
Are you not on
Christina
the
as
board yet?
Voting. I make a motion that we appoint Christina to be the voting member for the WSESU at the VSBA regional meeting.
I'll second that.
Or, sorry, annual meeting, not
Annual
regional
meeting.
meeting.
Yeah. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So why don't you send the board comments to Christina and myself, so we both have them. Okay, sound good? Thank you for going, Christina.
So it needs to come up at each of our board meetings
Indeed.
in the next week.
Yeah. And Christina, so folks, if Christina can't go, are people comfortable with us passing this off to Emily?
If she can go.
If she can go?
We'll make her go.
Okay.
Of course.
So I'm not gonna, I don't think we need to vote on that, but we can if we want to. No. All right. Is that it? Okay, so now we're gonna move on to superintendent evaluation. So at our so Superintendent Holliday was hired with a 2-year contract. I'm gonna ask you a question. How many, superintendent contracts are usually how long?
3-year rolling.
Okay. So we hired Lyle. Her contract is ending at the end of this fiscal year. By statute, we are required to confirm with her that our superintendent that we are rehiring them at the end of December. We've had a busy couple of years, and so we finally got on this a couple of months ago at our last school board, our last SU meeting. We moved to use the VSBA to help us with this process, and we moved to form a superintendent review committee. We had one member, so boards were supposed to provide either their board chair or another member of the board to be on this committee, and we went ahead and did that. We met 4 times with Sue, whose name I'm completely forgetting. Siglowski, who was very helpful. What we learned, and we created a process to move pretty quickly and I think expeditiously in how we did that. We got a lot done. We have now concluded that process, and now we're going to review that information. What we learned very early on, and Lyle was a full part of that process, was that when Lyle was hired, that she was not given a job description. For whatever reason, we don't know, we were not in that process, but there wasn't one, and so we quickly worked with her to generate one. So we think we have a very good draft, and it's that draft that we used when we created a survey, because the VSBA presented us with a rubric which really needed to be based on the job description. Obviously, we needed the job description, so we then adapted their rubric pretty significantly, and then it went out. We determined that that survey would go out to board members and administrators and central office staff. And so that process went forward. And we reviewed the results at our last meeting, and we chatted with Lyle. And now we're at the stage to talk to you guys about it. So that conversation needs to be an executive session, and so we're gonna need to do that. Before we do that, let me pass around the job descriptions, so everyone has that. Okay. Okay, have I covered everything? And who's on the committee who's on the committee who's in this room? Not, so.
Kind of.
Yeah, so Jill stepped in at the last minute, but Christina and I were there. Christina unfortunately missed the last meeting. Is it okay if we go ahead and move into executive session? What we need to do is have a motion that we're going into executive session under VSA section 31383 in order to evaluate an employee.
So moved.
And is there a second? And we're going to say goodbye to Frank and Brattleboro Area Community PD. So thank you. Any discussion before we?
She leaves and then she'll come back.
Yes, she will come back because we're not done. Any discussion before we, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstaining?
I move that we rise from executive session.
Second.
Any discussion in executive? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, so we have a document. Is there a motion? We have an assessment that needs to be signed by myself and Lyle. Is there a motion for us to do so?
I move that we authorize Alice to sign
Document. Assessment.
assessment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right, good. Does anyone want to reflect on,
I have a
do you want-
question.
yeah.
I thought you had mentioned, when we were in the executive session, that there was some goals for the SU that were developed as a result of the process. Could we talk about that?
Yes, we can. It's like 7:50.
Oh,
So I'll quickly chat about those, and then I think we should put them on the agenda for our next meeting.
okay.
Be more clear when we're reviewing board policies, make board member education a priority at every meeting. And I believe there were several others that are not in the minutes, and I'm not recalling them right now. And so
Okay.
I think we'll bring them.
Collect more.
Yeah. So we have a couple things to do over the next 2 or 3 months. Lyle needs to be offered the opportunity to stay with the SU by the end of December. And in order to do that, we need to generate a contract for her. So this committee that was reviewing, who did the process with Lyle, is proposing to the board that we pass this off to the finance committee. And of course, we've tabled previous discussions as to who is responsible or who should take the charge of working with employees in these realms. But it seems like the simplest thing, since everything is in flux in the state, that we not create an additional committee to work on this contract. So if we were to do that, we would need a motion to pass that responsibility on to the finance committee. But we should talk about that. But we need to move pretty quickly because we usually only meet 4 times a year. And so I think we want to have something in place to vote on by the December meeting.
Do you all understand what she's saying? I had a hard time understanding it earlier.
We need to authorize we hope to authorize the executive committee to write Lyle's contract.
Finance.
Finance, sorry, yes.
And so
Wrong word.
we had gone back and forth before on what exactly is the finance committee's role, and then we had a whole big discussion, and then we tabled it like
Yes.
2 times.
But we're just sidestepping that in the interest of time here to
Exactly.
continue the way that we've been doing.
So you're all up, and, yep, that's it.
Okay, I move that we authorize the finance committee to create a contract. Is that what we're doing here?
Negotiate a contract.
Negotiate a
Negotiate a
contract with the
contract
superintendent.
for the superintendent.
That's okay. We're on to that over here, you guys gotta go faster. We're moving us on.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Is there,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, is there an existing contract that there
Yes.
can be worked on? Okay.
And there's now a job description that we need.
Yes, so we're gonna talk about that in a second. But is,
You don't have to eat that, like.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, so we have a draft job description, and we really need the SU to say that this is a job description, this is the job description, because right now it is a well-written draft by the committee, but none of us, we have not reviewed it as an SU. So how do you want to move forward on that?
I would recommend that we table it so people can take a really good look at it.
Right, so if we table, the thing is, we don't, so that it's complicated timing, because the, when we're in negotiations with Lyle, there needs to be a clear job description.
There's no reason why we can't have another SU meeting.
Do we want to have another SU meeting
Because-
just to discuss this?
Quite frankly, I think we should be having more SU meetings so that we can all discuss things together, so Lyle doesn't have to run around to all the boards with things. So I have no objection to having another meeting sometime.
So we could have another meeting, or we could pass the job description off to each of our individual boards, and then the finance, you could share your comments with the finance committee, and then, go ahead,
What
Christine.
about having the committee's superintendent evaluation committee, which was chairs of every board, meet with their boards and then come back and bring back the feedback, because it's.
And meet with the finance committee.
And meet with the finance
There you go.
committee and work it all out together, since we're pretty intimate with that document at this point.
That's a great idea. Everyone think that's a good
That would be a
idea?
good idea. I just hate getting something at night when you can't read it and.
Yeah.
and-
Christina, let me just make sure, you want to go back to the superintendent evaluation committee, which you referred to as the chair boards, it's not actually in our case.
Oh. Well, whoever was the appointee to that, or whoever you want to send to do that, because I thought most of them were the board chairs.
I think they mostly were.
I think it's all but us. We just appointed because we didn't understand exactly.
So that's fine.
But that's also because you couldn't make those meetings.
Yes. We had
So
to
if
leave
you
it
couldn't
because
make the
you weren't
meeting-
available. that
You
was
were,
right.
away, you were traveling.
So as I understand it, Christine, you're not suggesting that committee meet again by themselves, you're suggesting they meet with the finance committee.
They meet with their boards to get feedback and then meet with the finance
Exactly,
committee in a
yes.
joint meeting to
Share the feedback.
share the feedback
Of the job description.
of the job description.
Okay, does that work for everyone?
Or we could send whomever, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't have to stick
it
with
does not
what
have
was
to be the
before.
chair.
Yes.
Because I think if our board discusses it and Kim's a rep to the finance committee, we don't have a problem.
We'll take him.
Gee, thanks.
This is all Jill trying to get out of going to more meetings.
Well, no, I just am trying to make it streamlined, you know?
So I think we've covered all the topics.
We didn't talk about the process at all, but
No, I think we'll have to talk about the.
I can say 2 seconds and then maybe nobody needs to talk about it again. The process and that she's alluding to that we were talking about previously, which maybe doesn't make any difference at all, but previously the superintendent evaluation had been sent out to each board and the results came back individually to each board. And my thought when I was looking at these results is that I use those as board chair of trying to figure out, are we communicating well and doing what we need to do as a board as well? So if there's one board member that consistently, or one response, maybe not even one board member that's consistently, I don't understand what a policy is, I don't understand what the superintendent's doing with whatever, then that is not a reflection so much, in my opinion, on Lyle, but rather on the job of me as a chair. And we didn't break those out this year, and so that was one of the things that we thought of as if we continue with the structure of having all these different boards, of maybe wanting to have that looked at next year of how to make that work. We also, I actually went back and looked, and I was the one who made the motion of hiring this folks from the Vermont School Board Association to do the work of helping us through this evaluation process. But when I made the motion in my head, I was making a motion only that we were going to hire them to come up with an evaluation, not to actually walk through the entire part and lead the entire discussion, and only have that review committee actually sitting with Lyle. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we brought back and did this a little bit tonight, but we've also discussed at that level. I think the Brattleboro board, for example, would probably like to have a moment to give our commendations. I have any concerns. I think they're mostly commendations to Lyle ourselves. And so at that committee meeting, we thought that it was important for all the boards to know that, whether if you would like to go into executive session and once again review these results yourselves and talk to Lyle for any reason.
That is an option.
Definitely an option. So I think that was really all of it. Is that right?
That's boring, right?
Before we dissolve,
Too late.
Christina, can I ask you, since we're in front of the camera and we had this discussion during executive session, I think it would be appropriate, could you speak to the process and Lyle's strengths? Could you talk about what a wonderful, the results of the survey process?
Oh, well, I think the reason there was some quietness is because it was an excellent reference. The survey results were excellent, and especially when you consider it's your first year and coming in at a really difficult time. I think that everybody in the room was in quiet agreement that the results from the survey were excellent and you deserve them.
And we are lucky to have you. Thank you. Yeah.
We're going to send her home to her husband with a big
I know.
She's
going to be drenched.
Anything further, guys? Thank you for such a long meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you.